And now I'm like, if I don't get my 8 hours of sleep, my muscles aren't going to grow. I'm not going to feel optimal. My cells are not, my mitochondria is not going to be at a place that supports longevity. I mean, I'm now just think different.
Welcome to Authentic Beyond the Couch, the podcast where healing goes beyond the therapeutic room. I'm your host, Jirzia Blackmon, and together we will explore real, raw conversations about life, growth, and embracing your most authentic self. This is your space for courage, connection, and healing beyond the couch. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Authentic Beyond the Couch. I have an amazing guest with me today. I'm excited about this conversation, and her name is Candice Terrazas. Welcome to Authentic Beyond the Couch, Candice. We are so excited to have you.
I am really honored to be here. I admire your work and just excited to have this conversation today.
Yes. So we are going to talk about mental health and nutrition and how those worlds are so intertwined. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You are doing so many things. You are not you have so many hats. So tell us about who you are.
Yes. So, and I will say, I've always been a driven woman. It's been something that's been the hardwiring of it, the good and the bad, right, that come with it, and had to learn sustainability the hard way, truly. So I'm a wife first and foremost. My husband and I have been married for 16 years, and we have two little ones, one in middle school. My son's in middle school, and then I have a daughter in fourth grade in elementary. We have a real estate business that he started and I kind of partnered in later on in our relationship that's been doing that for over 21 years now. So that's, our bread and butter. That's our family business. I've also had other businesses. I have my own coaching business. I've also coached agents within the real estate realm, which started off as business and productivity and then led into the health and wellness space, because as you and I have discussed outside of this call, a lot of times we find that that's intertwined. When people feel like they've hit a ceiling, a lot of times the root is that they've neglected the one thing that will change everything. I'm also a competitive bodybuilder. I did my very first bodybuilding competition in 2014.
We need to put photos up.
Yes, when I first competed, it was as a new mom. It was a bucket list thing, and it was kind of at a time when I had started a health and wellness business, had gotten residuals to a place where I was able to have more freedom of time, and so I thought it was a bucket list thing. I ended up having my second daughter, then down the road got into bodybuilding again. Right when I was going to turn 40, I told my husband, I was like, would you be okay if I made this commitment to do another bodybuilding show? There was a new division that came out, and do this for stepping into this next decade. I was 39 going to turn 40 in 2021. And so here I am. Those are the different hats that I wear, where I spend most of my time. And as I shared, I've been wired for discipline and responsibility most of my life. When I think back to when I was in high school, I remember begging my parents to let me get a job. And I was the third out of four girls. They didn't let any of us work. And I begged and I was pleading. And they told me, okay, you can work if your grades don't drop. And my grades ended up going up. So there was no argument there. And in college, I set this goal of graduating a year early, graduating college. I went to St. Mary's University in San Antonio and graduated in 3 years. And so it was always this desire to set these aggressive challenges for myself, not for anybody else. And for a long time, I did believe that pushing harder was the answer. And that mindset worked until it didn't. And I did end up running through a burnout period. I remember what the feeling, I would never have put the word burnout to what I felt in that moment, but it was this feeling of wanting to escape life. Like, I just want to pick up and move to another country with my family and not worry about anything. It was this desire to just flee the chaos that I had built for myself. And so I've always been disciplined. I just didn't know how to direct that discipline in a way that supported my body long term, because a lot of times it shows up first in our mental before it shows up in our physical. And you have the physical symptoms, you just don't have an awareness that that's what it is. when you start having these emotions and this lack of emotional regulation that comes with that high level stress. So that's me in a nutshell, and why I'm here today, and why I have prioritized health in the way that I do today.
Wow. So we need to like really break those points down, especially burnout and emotional regulation. We're going to jump into all of that.
Yes.
Yes. So I just have some questions for you
Yeah.
here. I wanted to kind of put in a plug about your real estate. I mean, you helped us find our home.
Yes, yes. Joy.
That was amazing. And just in that, like, just how caring and how you guys listened and, listened to everything we needed. And I think the big part for us was that we prayed when we got into the home. And that was so meaningful for us, like just touring the home. And then you guys, we went upstairs and it's like, okay, well, let's pray for this and so that God can do it. If it's his will, we'll get this home.
Yes, yes.
And we're here.
Well, we've been doing this long enough that we know God knows everybody's address. So that, even though when clients are in the midst of situations like, I really want this home, and there's, emotions attached to getting it or not getting it, for us, we can stand in peace because we know at the end it always works out, like the home address that God has for you. And so this is, I really, real estate is almost more like a ministry to my husband. He is so gifted in people and loving on people. He's not your and I can say this because I coach agents. He's not your stereotypical personality type for a real estate agent. I coach a lot of alpha, type A, aggressive, sales shark. And my husband, if you know him, which you do, he's very, he's quiet until you have a conversation, super knowledgeable, loves people, not scared to stop on the spot and pray and come in agreement with what God says about somebody's life, even if it has nothing to do with the home. And sometimes we don't even get to close on a transaction with someone, but we know the purpose was for something different, something deeper, something that we just needed to come in prayer with someone. So yeah, and I was very blessed to see him work it so passionately from when we got together in 2006. And I actually didn't get licensed until 2017. I was more behind the scenes doing the staging and all the pretty fun stuff, the marketing, and my strengths were actually, the things that he didn't do himself. He was outsourcing. And so those were things that were able to come in time. And I got licensed and stepped into real estate after that burnout period of running my own business and really running myself to the ground. And I remember God telling me to lay it all down. And I was like, there's no way that's God. That has to be the enemy, because the business that I was doing was incredibly lucrative. I mean, it was a constant, healthy, 5 figures a month that I was having to lay down. I was like, there's no way this could be God. And, real estate ebbs and flows and the ups and downs. But he was clear. And so as I laid it down and, transitioned into the season of partnering, now in hindsight, I can look back and I see even just what it did for our family unit, in our marriage, being able to come, I really do believe that husband and wife are meant to, come together as one flesh, and the strengths that God gives each of us, you can really, benefit in the things that he's called us to. So if it's this family business, God's going to find a way to operate where it feels like one flesh.
That's great. That's really good. Maybe I need to bring you back for some family and couples work.
Yeah, we're really excited to work with families. And I work with a lot of women that are starting businesses, and, a lot of times that comes up, and, where it almost feels like it can fall into a place of divisiveness if one feels like, the other person is kind of overpowering or stepping out of what the other one's comfortable with. And so helping each other see eye to eye and remembering that we're on the same team.
Yeah, that difference doesn't mean something's wrong. Difference means that something's great, and you actually balance each other out with your differences.
Yeah, the difference just means something's shifting, and so it's how do I navigate the shift?
Exactly. So take us to that burnout, that season in your life where things changed for you.
The burnout period was, a time frame when I remember what it felt like when the grace was lifted off my business. And it went from where I felt like God's wind was at my back and I was doing things and things were multiplying. And that's almost, now I can say, when God's grace is over something, yes, it still requires effort. It requires you to do the work. It requires you to steward what's in your hands, and not at the expense of pulling time completely from the things that matter most. Like for us, our first ministries, our home, our marriage, our family. So, and then, in entrepreneurship, you cannot just blanket statements saying like, oh, you can't do this. We have to, even in real estate, we have to come into agreement on timeframes. If we're up to my husband, he would work 7 days a week. So we have to come into agreement like, hey, you can work late. Just let me know what days they are. So that way we're good. And it's not like, hey, every day you're staying and you're working late. Or, hey, you work the weekends. Just let me know what weekends those are, because it can't be every weekend. And so, those seasons of working an excessive amount of hours, I'm all for. I know that that's required in entrepreneurship. Yet I went through what felt like a lot of fear mode when I felt like I lifted my foot off of the gas. And it almost really would bring anxiety where I would feel like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. I'm going to lose that. And this income, it almost felt like I was in control of the money that was coming in. And I know, God's word says, he is Jehovah Jireh. He is provider. And I would say those things, but was I operating like he was? No, I was the one that felt like I had this level of control. And I remember when I was already at that place, when I felt like the grace had lifted, when I felt like I was operating in self at all costs. I had just had my second daughter. Not just, but I was still breastfeeding her. I just remember there was this thing going on with my business, and I remember telling my husband, hey, I'm going to stay up late this week. And this is like really embarrassing to admit, but I only showered once in the entire week because I was staying up late. I'm in greasy hair. I mean, he would literally come and bring me the baby and I would breastfeed her while I was working on my computer. I mean, I was like, I'm committed. This week is like a small window that I have to make this happen for things to be really good for us. And we've been through financial shift with real estate. So there was a lot of fear that was going back to that. I mean, we went through the 2008, 2009, 10 recession. We know what it was like to like barely get by, calling creditors and telling them like, hey, we're going to be late. Like we went through that. So a lot of my fear was going back from that place of like, I have to keep this control or else that can happen. And I mean, honestly, I think after that week, I broke down. I just remember being in my bathroom about to take a shower, and I just could not stop crying. And there was this, at the time, I think the Carrie Job album had come out, and there was this song that came on. I still get goosebumps thinking about it, about, just surrendering my will. And it was, the Isaiah verse of like declaring, like, let me just be what you want me to be. And I just felt so convicted that I was trying to control and operate my life, saying that I trusted him, but not in my actions. I was not. And I just had to release everything, my identity. I had to get clarity that my identity is not what I did, because that was also a big part that was hovering over me. Is like, if people see me not operating like this, and this is what they've known me as, like, who am I then? And that wasn't even a question of what they think. I'm asking myself, who am I if I don't do this? And so it was a wild year of tug of war with God. And I just remember, like even in that transition, and yes, seeing the income like decrease and initially feeling like I was letting down the people that I was mentoring and developing on my team, just really trusting like God loves them more than I do. And I cannot believe that I have that much power. And if this is truly him and he is calling me to lay it down, then let peace reign. Peace will always be my umpire. And so then that went through that year, started taking my classes of real estate, wasn't sure what that was going to unfold, but there was this peace that covered our home. I was laughing with my kids again. I was not stressed about, scheduling calls. And it was just a different level of peace that I had not experienced in a very long time, if ever.
Wow. So it seems like you were operating under survival mode. Just
Yeah.
over functioning and trying to get things done. And once you let go and surrendered, then that's when things began to shift and change, and you begin to live in the real peace that God has called us in, and that surpasses understanding. And although financially it looked differently, it gave you peace and surrender.
Yeah. And, and even during that time, and, kind of goes hand in hand with, the intention of our call, because I had my second daughter and I wasn't prioritizing exercise. I mean, I would still work out, but I'd go and do like, little hit classes that I'd sign up for, go get the hour in. It was just like check a box, go in, do this intense cardio class, and then come home. And what I didn't know at the time that I know now is that any level of stress we put on our body goes through eustress and distress. The distress is the unhealthy kind. The eustress is almost like the healthy, getting ready to prepare for a presentation. Well, our nervous system responds to it the same. And so while I was having this high level stress on my body from that was self-inflicted with my work and my business, and then I was going and putting in an hour of like high intense stressful workouts. So I was just really running my body to the ground. And then additionally, because I wanted to lose the baby weight, I was dieting. Keto was kind of new in the world in the United States. So I had ventured into that to drop the weight fast. And I've tried paleo and I tried vegetarian. I was just, what's the fastest way that I don't have to think about my health and nutrition to still lose the weight and keep functioning at this capacity in my business? And so at the time, if you were to ask me if health and nutrition was important, give you all the reasons why it was. Like, look at, I work out and I eat this way and I'm eliminating that. I would justify that I was eating healthy. And now I look back and I think, wow, those were actually things that were contributing to the burnout and to the depletion of my health.
Wow. So now your mind has shifted. Take us into who Candice is now and how you see your health and nutrition and your body.
I think moving from where it was maybe initially performance and discipline, even the bodybuilding part, when I did my first competition in 2014, a lot of that was to it, and there were still positives from that very first competition while it was, in that first business. And that I learned that there was a level of confidence that comes with doing what you say you're going to do. And that, really contributed to a lot of the success of the business. And so 2021, I was going to turn 40, and I remember stepping into that year. There was a new division that was healthier for my body type. I love the aspect of bodybuilding, competing. And so at the time there was only a few categories. And so when this new division came out, it was a category that I was enticed by. I was like, okay, that's a physique I'd like to build. That's not one I have today, but it would be a challenge, to me, knowing I like the challenges. And so maybe at the beginning it was about the discipline, that level of control that I've liked to have. But over time it became more about learning my body and how it responds. I realized that my body wasn't the enemy. It was just giving me feedback, along the way. And this really mirrors how many women live emotionally, right? Like we end up, responding to our body in the way it looks. And sometimes it leads to unhealthy measures. And so what does it look like to do it in a way that's like for your future, getting vision for your future? And so, yeah, that's now, then I stepped into that, new world, and really with guidance, I've had, coaches that I've grown a ton with, and understanding that proper fuel, proper recovery, proper rest, and makes you cautious of where your energy is going. Everything that we do requires energy. Getting up in the morning, taking your kids to school, everything we do, conversations that we have. Like I know on days, and you can probably relate to this, on days I'm like have high back-to-back coaching calls, and if they're very heavy, I'm not going to go schedule a, really crazy workout that evening, or maybe not even something intense with my kids. It'll be a laid back dinner because we're limited to how much energy we have come out. So, I like to plan those things when possible, and just really respecting the recovery state of what it looks like for our bodies, and even, I'm working with a new client now, and she's in high tax season that's just beginning. And so she's like, oh, I'm going to do these 4 a.m. workouts and I'm going to have these 12-hour shifts. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I really appreciate that aggressiveness to like go and conquer it all. But then what does it look like if you just keep doing that, right? That's when people hit the wall. And so having an awareness, do you have to work 12 hours every day? No. Okay, well, what days are you going to work the 12 hours? And so now we lay out a plan to where we respect what the body is going through so that we can prioritize that recovery and sleep. Before I used to think it was awesome that I could function off of 4 to 6 hours. Oh yeah, I only slept 4 hours and I feel great. And now I'm like, if I don't get my 8 hours of sleep, my muscles aren't going to grow. I'm not going to feel optimal. My cells are not, my mitochondria is not going to be at a place that supports longevity. I mean, I'm now just think different, and it really helps position the choices that we make from when we get up, and the conversations we have, the relationships we choose to invest in. I mean, all of those things are sacred.
Yeah. So as you're speaking, I thought about the scripture, "My people perish for the lack of knowledge." And it seems like you've gained so much knowledge. And so it's shifted how you see yourself, how you see life, how you see your nutrition, how you operate in that. So for people who have no idea what we're talking about, how can we, what is there something that you can say to them or teach them on this journey, or take them with you?
Yeah, well,
How do they
one of the
start?
things that I use a lot is you do what you do because of what you think of you.
Mm.
And you do what you do because of what you think of you. So if you are someone who is on the hamster wheel, working a lot, you just don't have time to exercise or meal prep or eat well, you really getting to the root of that. What part of you believes that you're not worthy of taking care of your health and nutrition? And where does that stem from? I mean, this is more probably stepping into your
My
arena.
world, right?
So, but the reality is there is a belief somewhere that you are not worthy of taking that time and prioritizing you. For me, it may have come from, I did come from a very giving, loving mother, and she a lot of times compromised herself, to bend over backwards for other people. So sometimes, the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud is where I actually uncovered that. And so that's where, where we have those like in-depth conversations about why we're not taking care of ourselves, because we all have different levels of commitment. We also have different levels of capacity. I don't believe the whole we all have the same 24 hours a day, because we do not have the same 24 hours a day. Some of us have different responsibilities. Some people are doing this as a single parent. Some people are capacity is just less than somebody else's and hasn't been stretched yet. So it's not a matter of like the 24 hours. It's more of, so where is that belief that I'm not worthy of taking care of me? And then just saying, what does it look like to start one thing that says my health is important? And it doesn't even have to be about weight, because that's one of the things that drives a lot of women to make health decisions and shift in their protocols. I want to look this way, but that will only take you so far. That you get to a point to where it's like, I was fine the way I was before. This is too much work. You've got to have a deeper reason. And so it doesn't have to be about the workouts or even about the nutrition. What about something as basic as I'm going to be intentional about my water intake on a day-to-day basis? Just managing that alone and starting to stack up the little habits, 20-minute walks a day. You can break it up, 10 minutes during your lunch break, 10 minutes after dinner. For the people that say they don't have time, if you don't have time to be with your kids, go on a walk with your kids. Even if they say they don't want to, you make them go on a walk with you. You're knocking out time with them. You're instilling a healthy habit for them. For those that are newish moms taking babies to the gym, there's so much fear around, oh, the germs and this and that, and I don't want my kids. And I can respect that. I am a mom. I remember those valid feelings. Yet I also have to choose, like, what story am I telling myself, and is it serving me and my future? Can I tell myself a different story? So in my case, I had to say, you know what? Like, I didn't get this modeled. I learned this very late in life. What would it look like that my kids know the gym environment as a norm? It's a day-to-day thing where stepping into the gym isn't going to be something that will be fear-based for them. They can walk into a weight room with confidence because they grew up in a gym. Like, I had to start telling myself new stories that serve me and my future and my health and the choices we were making, so that I didn't keep sabotaging my goals. Because it's easy to say, like, oh, if I put them in this environment, this can happen and this can happen. And it's like, well, your body's going to respond whether it's happening or not. That's the thing about fear. Whether the situation is happening or not, your system still responds as if it was actually happening. So you have to shift the story. And that's, biblically why the word says to take your thoughts captive, because he knew our thoughts were going to go there, but how long are we going to stay there? And so at some point we have to take responsibility and say, I'm not going to let those thoughts stay there. I'm going to tell myself a story that serves me. And slowly but surely, you start to rewire your thought patterns, and now you have different thoughts, and it starts making those habits not feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree. Like there is a story that you tell yourself. Like for me too, that was for my health. And we're gonna put a picture of my before and after. But before I, I tried all that stuff. I tried diets. I tried all these things, but I didn't get to a place until probably 2022 when I actually began to do what I wanted, what I needed to do for my body because I wanted to live. Like it wasn't because I wanted to look good, because I wanted to be skinny or anything like that. I wanted to live and I wanted to thrive. And there was so much things happening with me medically, where my numbers were off, and all kinds of numbers. The doctor didn't even know what was going on because I didn't have symptoms, but my blood work was showing different things. And so I began to do research and educate myself. And then I learned like how food is connected to my mental health and my physical health. And so just doing research and learning about oils and and all this, all this dye and all this thing that we have in our foods, and how that affects our ability to wake up and feel energetic, our ability to go to the gym, our ability to go for a walk. Like if we don't take care of that part first, we can't even do the other part. I want to take a quick moment to share something that's so close to my heart. If you're in a relationship and you're navigating conflict, disconnection, or even affair, betrayals, or even past wounds that just continue to show up, I wrote a book for you. It's called A Couple's Guide to Transforming Pain into Connection. And it's designed to help you and your partner move from frustration and hurt into a deeper understanding, healing, and emotional connection. It's a trauma-informed book. This book walks you through practical tools, honest conversations, and the kind of inner work that creates real change, not just temporary fixes. There's journals. It's just amazing. If that's something you need right now, you can find it on Amazon. I'll also make sure that the link is in the descriptions. It's available in English and Spanish, softcover and hardcover. So just pick it up on Amazon. Let's continue doing the work together.
Yeah, and I mean, we're at a time where autoimmune disease is rampant. People are being diagnosed at a rate like never before, and a lot of that stems to some of the things that you're bringing about. I mean, autoimmune is just a response, an inflammation in your body that is a response to an external stressor that is now being put in your body. And so,
Say that
have
again.
having that curiosity where you're like, okay, what am I actually eating? If there's something I can read on a label, I'm just going to get curious about what it is, seeing those oils, seeing these things, and then what would it look like to eliminate them, or just, really eat whole foods, maybe invest on the organics when it comes to, like, the berries and the things that that studies show have the most pesticides. And it can feel so overwhelming when you begin a journey like this, like, oh my gosh, well then I can't eat anything. That's what people tell me. Well, then I can't eat anything. Everything is contaminated. It's like, no, that's not true. That's what your belief, you're going to partner with a belief like that to keep doing what you're doing. So if we can think differently, it's like, I can make one change. Like maybe, and this is silly, and don't read too much into it if you think I'm being silly by saying this, but I'm just going to take out things with sunflower oil. I know that sounds silly, but if that was just the one thing that I did, or I'm just going to buy, when it comes, I won't buy organic produce, but when it comes to berries, I'm just going to buy organic there. Like the little things where all of a sudden you're like, hey, I noticed I didn't have, an autoimmune response that I normally have, or I didn't feel bloated. Our intestines, our gut, that is truly like our second brain. And so, yeah, having
Can
a
you speak to that? The intestines and gut being our second brain.
Yeah, so it really is. It communicates with our brain. And so we really want to be mindful of those things. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're having an inflammatory response to food because it's been so normalized. We've become accustomed to these kinds of foods that this is just life. This is just the way my stomach is. And there are so many times that when I put my clients like on a meal plan, and I'll give specific, food lists, like these are the veggies I want you to stay within. These are the carbs I want you to stay within. These are the proteins. And this isn't forever. This is just so you're having awareness for now, and I want to see how your body responds. And a lot of times like, oh my gosh, I've lost all this weight, and it's physically impossible to lose that much weight in a short amount of time. And really what it is, it's the inflammation that their body that they had been battling, thinking that this was just, oh, my stomach's always like this. It's like, no, your body just had inflammation. And once we prioritize the gut and we start being in tune, also something simple like getting vitamin D, going outside, trying to do that first thing in the morning, that's also a response that promotes, the healing. So there are, it doesn't have to be complicated or overwhelming. It can be as simple as you let it be. And just, staying curious instead of making blanket statements like everybody in my family has high cholesterol or everybody in my family is overweight. Like, what would it look like if instead of making that statement, we get curious about it? I wonder why my family has inflammation. I wonder why this autoimmune disease is prevalent in my family. And once that curiosity starts, then you start finding the answers and you end up being the one that changes the future trajectory for your next generation and the generations to come.
Yeah, it's sort of like the idea that like things are biological. And yes, some things are biological, but some things are taught or learned, right? And so maybe everyone in my family has hypertension because we all eat the same things.
Yeah.
You know, and
And so you can be predisposed to it. Like you said,
mhm,
maybe there it truly is in the bloodline where there is a predisposition to a certain diagnosis. Yet that all that is data. It's not a declaration, it's not a diagnosis over your life. This is just data. So if I know that this is something that comes up in my family lineage, then I have to get curious around what things do I need to do differently so it doesn't consume me, take over my life, or become my destiny.
you got it.
And so that's that, I got really curious around eating because I had spent so much time on dieting and doing this and pulling out meats and then doing this and trying that. I've tried it all that when I just, okay, this is too complicated. And it's also not anything that you have to pull entirely that becomes restricting entire food groups. For me, that doesn't seem sustainable long term. I mean, I know some people do it successfully, yet for me, it was personally something that I just had to get more curious about. And now there are no extreme restrictions on anything. If I feel like a piece of chocolate cake, I'm going to have my chocolate cake. What I can tell you though is that I rarely crave those things, and that when I do, I won't overeat because I'm putting the right nutrients in my body. When your body is fed well, when it has the proper nutrition, you can have whatever you want and you will not overconsume it. I promise you. It's just something that magically happens where all of a sudden there's a release of guilt around food. There's not a shame that comes over you where you think, okay, I already broke it, so I can go all out on my, I already stopped my diet, so I'm just going to go all crazy and I'll start again on Monday. Like that mindset is so sabotaging, and you won't have it if you just, again, taking it back. If having a whole meal plan seems overwhelming, start with how much protein are you getting in a day? Do you even know? Like if you were to track just today and tomorrow, would you have an idea how much? And then so most people are alarmed, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even get enough in for a toddler. and
Wow.
so yeah, I think that those are things like when once I get my clients, with the proper protein intake, they are like, wow, it's so weird. Like I was at my kids' birthday parties and I passed up a piece of cake or I had a bite and I was genuinely fine. I didn't want more. And so your body's just craving to be satiated.
Can you say more about that? Your body is just craving to be satiated.
Yeah, having nutrient dense foods, and not having so much emotional connection. And that's why, it shifted a lot because I grew up, being Hispanic and in a culture where all celebrations centered around food. And this is like, very like thick creams, heavy sauces, very oil rich foods that are very savory, but also not super nutritious. There's a lot of, health diagnoses related to the way that we eat in our culture. And so because of that, there was always this like mentality of food was a celebration. And so I had to break ties with that. And I still love going out. I am a foodie at heart. My husband and I love going out to eat, but it just looks different today. And really with, speaking to like my food, my body being satiated, I eat even when I'm not hungry. Granted, I'm on the extreme side because I am a competitive bodybuilder, but even if I wasn't, like once I stopped competing, there's some basic principles that I've taken that I know will propel like my health goals as in the future because I eat. I don't put so much emotions. Like if it's time to eat, I eat whether I feel like it or not. And this, I have mixed feelings about the intermittent fasting
Okay.
culture that we've stepped into. I think there's a lot of benefits to fasting, first and foremost, spiritually. Second, if there's like an extreme diagnosis like cancer, I do believe like extreme fast can work. Yet the intermittent fast craze that people step into to lose weight, it can work, and it's just postponing the real, like the band-aid, right? We still got to rip off the band-aid and deal with the food issues and the emotional connection we have to food. And so, putting protein in my body first thing in the morning with a good complex carbs. Carbs are not the devil. Carbs still help us think. We need a fuel source to think, to have energy to move about our day, having healthy fats. If I'm consuming the proper carbs, the proper fats, and the right amount of protein, my body is satiated and I'm not gonna, feel the slump in the middle of the day that makes me want to reach for a bag of candies or go to the vending machine or need a cup of coffee, because your body is designed to run on the nutrition that you give it. And if you're not giving it nutrition, that's why that 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock crash that everybody talks about is because we're underfed. We're eating very, very carb dense lunches that are very low protein, and not moving a lot. We're not in a society, or at least particularly the city we live in, where people are walking. Everybody drives to work, has vehicle transportation. So just getting that movement in. You don't have to go crazy on the treadmill. I think tracking steps is a great thing. I mean, people are gonna be surprised to hear this, especially as a bodybuilder, but I don't really do cardio. I just manage my steps. Unless I'm prepping for a competition, but outside of that, like I'm just seeing how many steps. If I'm on the computer all day because I'm working, then I know that I'm going to go for a longer walk tonight with the kids. Or if I am going to get on the treadmill, I just do walking at an incline. I'll put on a good audio book or a podcast or a sermon. And so it doesn't have to be so hard. I think we just need to find ways to make it fun.
Yeah, yeah. So as you talked about, like our bodies being doing what it was designed to do, does faith intertwine with what you do in any type of way? If so, can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. I feel like it's shifted from punishment to stewardship. That constant yo-yo dieting, those intense cardio classes. I would have told you back then that it was because I was honoring my body, but it felt like, now looking back, I'm like, we were just punishing you. You're like doing these extreme diets. Like, it was truly punishment. So now it's stewardship. I get this body. I'm 44 years old. I don't take it lightly that I can move and that I can lift weights and do the things that I do. And I just want to steward it well. And it's shifted also how I view discipline, and not seeing it as, again, something that I have to do, that I get to do. And knowing that I don't have to do it alone. Like, he puts that in me, when I don't feel like doing it. Your feelings make great servants, but terrible masters. Knowing that I don't have to lean into my mood or my feelings. And just knowing that your body wasn't something to dominate. I don't have to take control over my body. He designed it, and it is an art. I think that's why I love bodybuilding so much, is I truly feel like my body's a piece of art, and that I get to take care of, and I can mold it and I can sculpt it, and it does it responds in a way that God designed it like this. Like, he didn't have to make us like this, where you give it proper nutrition, you move enough, and you start feeling well, and now your confidence level, elevates. And one of the big things that I've seen this do for women in, when it comes to faith and their own journey is, helping them steward their marriage better. I know a lot of women that would say that they didn't like being intimate with their husband. They felt very insecure. The conditions had to be perfect, lights off, all the things. And, when it comes down to it, that is, our one flesh. And if it's because we're not stewarding our bodies well, then just partnering with God. God, I want that level of confidence in my own skin. It doesn't mean you have to look a certain way, but having a confidence to not feel shame, that's so not from God. And so, just knowing this is something that was entrusted to us, and stewardship just shifted how I train, how I fuel, and basically now even how I rest.
Wow, that's great. Um, a question that I have for you is, how did learning to properly fuel your body change how you felt emotionally and physically?
One of the big things is understanding that capacity changes everything. And I mentioned earlier that not everybody has the same capacity. And even if your capacity isn't stretched, you can stretch it. And we do that by doing uncomfortable things, stepping out and doing things, taking the risk. I think when we start doing things like that, that's how we start stretching our capacity, and in turn stretches our faith. But in that, it also helps you have more patience. Like, I definitely feel that, me properly fueling my body has given me more patience with my kids, with my husband, in my business. It also gives me a lot more emotional resilience. So I feel like I don't stay in my sulky feelings longer. It helps me be less reactive. If you have the right nutrition, you can think clearly. You don't get that brain fog as quick. clearer decision making. I see that a lot when I coach, entrepreneurs or real estate agents is, they operate like everything's themselves last, right? Like, oh, I don't have time to go to the bathroom. I don't have time to go, all the basic needs. I don't have time to drink water. I don't have time to go. I'm just gonna pick up a quick meal. And it really does impact your performance. It impacts you from that clarity that you need to be on your game, to be able to grow a business, to be able to serve people well. And, just having the energy to show up consistently. And, if I went back to the way that I was eating, I know that it would be very unstable, how I could show up because the energy would ebb and flow.
Yeah. So it's sort of like that's partially like self-regulation. And also, like, if you take care of your physical health, that takes care of your emotional health, right? Because then you show up better. You can, you're not as easily irritated. You have more patience, and you're more calm, slow to speak, and you're more clear in what you're speaking. It sounds like what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, and I know this now even because when I'm in prep getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, the last 6 weeks I am not super fun to be around, and my family's incredibly gracious. They are so supportive with me doing this. The day they said that they were not on board, I would not do this anymore because it does require a lot. But you know, uh, contrary to what it looks like, you see these, elite physiques. It's really not that healthy. You do it for one day. I don't desire to live like that year round. I mean, I have habits of a bodybuilder year round, yet the extreme. So those last 6 weeks when my carbs are getting pulled, when, cardio is high, all the things that a lot of people, that's their life, right? It makes me short fused. Just I don't show up emotionally as my best self, and it's just one of those things where hubby comes in and he's like super. He picks up. No, he's so gracious. He picks up like,
No, you are like, bro.
yes, I'm like that. Like, and I'm super open with communication, and I've gotten better. I mean, I've been doing this for a few years, so now he'll be like, "Wow, this prep, you were not very like moody," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't, right?" And I think it's also the reminder I chose this. Like, I don't have to do this, but there are some times where physically, I mean, you're incapable. Like, I feel like, oh my gosh, where are my brain cells?
Yeah. It's sort of like what you started out with talking about, like the nervous system, how it reacts the same way, regardless of which way it's, whether it's overworking or it's body, like that extreme part of
Yes.
bodybuilding, it's still reacting the same way.
Exactly. And that's why, when a lot of people see, oh, I want to do a bodybuilding competition, the conversation gets real deep because I'm like, this is not something you do just to do. Like it requires a full support team. I mean,
Hmm.
coaches, and your family, most importantly, being on board and having that support system because, it is really extreme and it can get hard if it's not for the right reasons. To me, I feel called to it. And I always, every year we start the year and, lay out like the things that we're called to do and just trust God that he will prune desires from spaces that we're not supposed to be in anymore. And so for as long as he has me here, I'm grateful to be here.
I love that. I love that. Like how you guys plan for the year. That's really,
Yes.
we call it like rituals, that things that you need to do, as a couple. And that's great that you guys do it at the beginning of the year, kind of like the whole year. Yeah.
Yeah, to know when we're gonna need each other to, be each other's strengths different times of the year where one person might be going full speed in one way. It's like, hey, this is where we gotta be.
That's great. That's great. Is there something that you think people need to know, um, that may change their course of their health? Is there something?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it goes back to what we shared about the small, consistent support over the radical overhauls. And, the basics, you need to eat enough, you need to sleep more, and really to stop punishing our bodies. I encourage women to speak nicely to their bodies out loud. Your brain doesn't remember, what it thinks, it remembers what you say. And so verbally, audibly saying, speaking life to your body, because for me, maybe it's just me, but I don't think it's just me. I think that sometimes we can be so critical. We see in the mirror, it's like, oh, stretch marks, or oh, I hate this part of my stomach. And we have all these thoughts that are not serving us. And so just, I'm grateful. This body carried life. Like I am so grateful. And being able to audibly speak, I feel so great that I have a husband that loves me just the way I am, no matter what phase I've been in. And I just starting to speak life over my body And I think that that's something so simple yet so profound in how we start looking at ourselves, because sometimes even our confidence levels start showing up. We start having these beliefs that, like, yeah, my body did do incredible things. That's enough confidence to open the door to the gym. That's enough confidence to start that new habit that makes, big shifts. And a big reason why confidence is such a core thing I like to coach around, because I know that we can really set out in purpose over the things we're called to do when we have the confidence who's behind us. So it's probably one of the biggest things that I'm passionate around helping women find.
So is there anything that you want to share, last words, anything that you feel that someone needs to know that would help maybe a listener who's struggling with their physical, with their emotional, with their eating, with their relationship? Like, well, is there something that you can just give to them?
Yeah, releasing the shame. There's whatever you've done or not done in the past is behind you, and just starting today, like finding one accountability partner, somebody who is for you, who wants the best for you, and just sharing where your heart is at. I think a lot of times it's just vocalizing, putting your thoughts to words, and having someone safe in a space where you can share and letting that unfold. What's brought to light, the enemy cannot be messing with anymore. And so just bringing it to light. This is what I've been struggling with. These have been my issues. This is a learned behavior. This is something that I self-inflicted. Wherever you're at, being able to bring it to light, having a conversation with somebody who's for you and wants the best for you. And that one simple thing, you don't need a total radical overhaul, but what's the one thing that you could do that if you did it every day, your life would look totally different this time next year? One thing. It might just mean, like, I'm gonna drink my water. Well, then let's start there.
Yeah, I love that. That's a SMART goal, right? Something that's
Yes,
really measurable, that's
measurable.
really simple, just a SMART goal, something that I can just attain. Maybe it's not going for a 5 mile run, but it's just walking for 10 minutes. It's
Yeah.
something that's actually attainable.
And for like the high achieving woman, somebody, like me probably wouldn't have said, oh, I'm not going to just do one simple thing. I do need a massive goal to go after. So for the high achieving woman that's listening to this, maybe it is that 5K. Sign up for a 5K. You don't have to schedule it next month. Sign up for it in 6 months. So what does that mean? Then I got to go start walking today. And then what happens? And then before you know it, I walked half a mile and I jogged half a mile. And then before you know, I jogged a whole mile. And then I actually ran 2 miles. And so incrementally, commit to a date where there is, because I know high achievers, we work well under pressure. And sometimes it is having a goal like that, but make it something that's sustainable and healthy. You don't want to, for somebody who's not a big runner, you don't want to sign up for a marathon, but a 5K is doable if somebody set that out. If there's somebody who's not working out at all and put a 5K as a goal in 6 months, I think that's doable.
So that's great. So we have the SMART goals and we have the high achieving goals. So whichever
Yes,
one you fit in, do that. Just do
that's right.
something rather than nothing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And put it to paper and to somebody that you trust that wants the best for you.
Yes. Yes. So tell people, everyone, where they can find you
Yes.
and everything about you.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Candice Terrazas, Candice, and then the last name's Terrazas. And yeah, so I put a lot of fun content out there. Sometimes it's educational, sometimes it's funny. You'll get a little bit of my spirit, my heart in my Instagram. Facebook, I put a lot of, tips, things that you could start that are practical. As I don't know, am I middle-aged yet? I guess I am, as a 44-year-old mom who didn't prioritize muscle building until I turned 40. I've learned a lot and have been able to do a lot of things that I just want to share with others and understand the power of muscle. It's so much more than aesthetics, the benefits that it has on your bone protection, your brain health, and just for aging well, the longevity as a whole. So yeah, I'm happy to help however I can.
Awesome. So thank you so much for listening. Please follow and subscribe to Candice's pages that she has, Facebook, Instagram. Is there more? Okay. But thank you for listening. I hope you were able to learn and glean from everything that she shared with us today. Thank you for being here, Candice.
Thank you for having me. Have a blessed day.
You too. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Authentic Beyond the Couch. I hope today's conversation brought you insight, comfort, and simply reminded you that you are not alone on this journey. If you found this episode meaningful, please follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who may need to hear it. You can connect with me on Instagram at authenticbeyond_the couch for more resources and authentic conversations. Until next time, keep showing up as your most truthful self, and remember, healing can continue even beyond the couch.